Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Clark, and I want to share with you a little bit about explicit instruction and the use of technology. This session was presented in a larger format at CEC's 2019 conference by myself with Dusty Columbia Emberry from Eastern Kentucky University. The presentation was based on the work by Anita Archer in Explicit Instruction. You can see a copy of the book down in the corner. And our session was sponsored by DPHMD, the Division for Physical Health and Multiple Disabilities. DPHMD is always looking for new members and folks that want to engage to support students that have either physical health or multiple disabilities that can have or cannot have an intellectual disability. It can be medical conditions, orthopedic impairments. We kind of run the gamut, but support students with those medical conditions and diagnoses that receive support through special education and IDEA. So we would love to have people join in, and please don't hesitate to contact us through the CEC webpage, and we will find a spot for you to be part of our group. So what is explicit instruction? According to the definition by Anita Archer and in Ideas at Work, explicit instruction is a systematic instructional approach that focuses on the delivery and design procedures based on good research. And for students with disabilities, we know this is best practice. There was a fantastic article in Teaching Exceptional Children. You can see the picture of the article there. Explicit instruction, that has sometimes been called direct instruction, provides for that systematic and orderly instruction that makes learning accessible to students that have challenges with working memory and organization and other challenges to learning. There is more than 40 years of research behind explicit instruction, and the Institute of Educational Sciences, or IES, has produced lots of practice guides that focus on using explicit instruction as a strategy. So one of the key mottos when you're thinking about explicit instruction is this one: how well you teach has a direct correlation to how well students learn. We also know that one of the big ideas is explicit instruction focuses on student learning and on our effective teaching strategies. We know that one of the keys is teaching with passion. In other words, be exciting in the classroom, but manage with compassion. So for example, when I'm working with my students, and I work with a lot of students with emotional behavioral disabilities and autism spectrum disorder, often if I'm asking them to show me what they know, that causes a lot of stress and anxiety or anger. They're afraid that they're going to be called out for being wrong. So what I tell students is, I need you to show me that you understand what I've taught. The reflection is about my teaching. Have I taught you what you need to know? And if the answer is wrong, then maybe I didn't teach it to you well enough. So let me know that so I can reteach. So that's part of that compassion aspect to teaching. There are 16 crucial elements of explicit instruction. You see them color-coded here on this slide. They're divided into 4 areas. So we focus on the content itself, design, or how we present the lesson, and the design, what we've got within the lesson, the delivery, how we present the lesson, and then the practice opportunities we provide for students. So before we dig too deep, we want to keep in mind that for our students, there are a few things that have to happen. And there's this quick phrase in 4 steps, and we do it with motions. We remind students, you need to attend. In other words, look at the instruction. To intend, right? Fist to the head, meaning I want to get this into my memory. To rehearse, practice, 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 right? To be able to retrieve, bring it out from your brain, that content knowledge. So a lot of times when you're explaining to kids, we're going to be learning facts. I need you to attend to what we're doing so that you can intend, rehearse, and retrieve the content knowledge. For those of you that like to dig deep into the research, Hattie has done extensive work on effect size, and that magic number for a year's worth of growth for students is 0.4. And note that direct instruction falls in that 0.6 range, which means that students who learn facts, who learn vocabulary, who learn skills through direct instruction or explicit instruction have more than a year's worth of growth in that content knowledge. So we talked briefly about those 4 key elements: content, design, delivery, and practice. And all 4 need to be pulled together in order to really deliver explicit instruction for students with disabilities. So we love this phrase. One of the first elements is focus on critical content. In other words, cut the fluff, teach the stuff. A great example. I was teaching the CH lesson and I had pulled together all kinds of images. We talked a lot about my images, and at the end of the lesson I said, "What did we learn about today, kids?" And 3 kids yelled out, "Monkeys!" My key images were chimps, but the kids with all the fluff of my images didn't see the critical content, so I did not focus clearly enough. You've got to cut the fluff, teach the stuff. We also want to make sure that we're sequencing skills logically. Easier skills before harder skills, high frequency skills before low frequency skills, making sure kids have prerequisite skills first, and that we do similar skills separately. So in other words, don't teach latitude and longitude at the same time. Don't teach north, south, east, and west at the same time. Separate those discrete skills. And if I haven't made it explicit enough from the beginning, explicit instruction really focuses on teaching facts, on teaching skills, and on teaching strategies. We know that explicit instruction works best for students with disabilities because it gives them that pre-learning before we dive into any deeper learning. So for those of you that love project-based learning and inquiry-based learning, if you look at Hattie's work, that is a lower effect size. And that's not to say that we don't ever use it, but we want to make sure that our students have that sequential content knowledge, the facts, the skills, and the strategies before we dig into any kind of higher order, larger projects and inquiry-based learning. Teach the stuff, and then you can do the projects. The skill number 3, when we're looking at content, we want to break down complex skills into smaller instructional units. This really helps students who have limited working memory or processing speeds that are slower. Each time, I'd really encourage you, pause the video, take a few minutes to reflect on delivery and think about where your strengths are and what you need to do differently to grow as a teacher. So hopefully you took a few seconds to think. Now I want you to kind of take a little side commercial note here. When we use tech to engage students with explicit instruction, it can really increase their engagement. So a few suggestions are use Google Docs in the concept that we call HyperDocs to really engage students. If you'd like to learn more about HyperDocs, I'm going to hyperlink in this presentation and you can see the active links. You can dig into the Google Docs and HyperDocs. This is a great way for us to provide students with links to that knowledge. So say the prerequisite skill for counting to 5 was understanding the numbers 1 to 4. In my Google Doc, I can have a hyperlink to the prerequisite skills lessons of knowing the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if a student has lost that knowledge, they can go back in the Google Doc, click on links to those earlier lessons to refresh their memory on those key concepts. All right, let's look at design of instruction. So the first thing we're going to look at is focusing on making sure our lessons are organized and focused, making sure we have that clear statement, that learning target, and that we've reviewed prior skills. We're also going to ensure that we have step-by-step directions and demonstrations, and that we're using clear and concise language. Don't use words that won't make sense to your students, and don't clutter your instruction with lots of extra words. Make sure you've got an adequate range of examples and non-examples, and that you provide students with plenty of practice opportunities. You also want to make sure that your content and design elements are flowing together. If you click on the hyperlink again, you can check out a great video with Anita sharing a lesson that shows how content and design can flow together seamlessly. So the next element we're going to talk about is delivery of instruction, and we want to make sure we provide for frequent responses for students, whether that be verbal, written, or action responses. that we're monitoring student performance closely and providing immediate affirmative and corrective feedback. The focus here is that the feedback is both affirmative, we're letting students know that when they're doing a good job, when they're accurate and correct, and also providing corrective feedback so they don't continue with misinformation. The last two elements in this set are delivering instruction at a brisk pace. Don't be slowing down and wearing kids out. Keep that lesson moving, what we call a perky pace. You also want to ensure that you're helping students organize knowledge so that they can retrieve that later. So, two excellent videos if you'd like to look at that delivery elements of instruction and take some time to reflect on how you are using that within your own pace. The final element we want to talk about is providing that distributed and cumulative practice over time for students, key to ensuring that they're maintaining their knowledge over time. If we're looking at what those practice terms mean, distributed practice is spaced practice for that long-term retention. We want to make sure that it's not one and done. If it was important content in day 1, hopefully it's still important content in day 210, and that you're providing that distributed practice and a cumulative review so that students can retain and use knowledge. If you'd like to look at some retrieval practice and play, download the handouts and you can look right through. So now that we've gone through the 16 elements, and you are going to make sure that you're not unclear on any elements, but rather are good to go, you're going to want to remember to attend, to intend, to rehearse, to retrieve that information. Make sure you've got all those 16 elements down so that you're using them in your daily teaching. One of the keys to explicit instruction is this concept called I do, who we do, you do. And we want to make sure that we use this consistently in the right dosage for students with disabilities. So thinking about I do, we do, you do. I do is me modeling something. Guided practice is us doing it together. You do is that independent practice. But for students with disabilities, often in the general education classroom or that tier 1, we're doing everything one time. I do one time, we do one time, you do one time. And that might be enough for many students. But students that are in either tier 2 interventions or tier 3 interventions and special education often need that much larger dosage of each phase. So you'll see if we look specifically at tier 3, the I do might be 3 times in a row. I'm modeling a skill. And then we're doing together multiple times, taking a break. And then I'm going to start modeling again. We're going to do together and then have the student independently do at the end. The one caveat you want to keep in mind is we don't want to build learned helplessness and we don't want to make students prompt dependent. So you're really looking for that just right dose to ensure student mastery of concepts, but not slowing students down from being able to be independent. For our students that often need that repeated instruction by the teacher, but we know that we can't live and in person teach over and over again, I would encourage you to look into Screencast-O-Matic, which is what I'm using to record for free this video right now, and Screencastify, which is an equivalent. These are both free downloads if you search YouTube or Google for videos. They're also both Google add-ons that you can add onto your Chrome extension. Super easy to use and a great way to ensure that students could access content over and over again if they need that instruction provided multiple times, but you're not able to provide it. I hope this really fast lesson, less than 15 minutes, an overview of explicit instruction, has been helpful and can help you support students with physical health and multiple disabilities. Please tune back in for more quick lessons and let us know how we can help you with your teaching and supporting students in the future. We'd love to hear from you. Happy learning!